okay?
Can I see where your fingers are?
They're right in the middle.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay, and I press up.
And I press up and get that back to lift. You can't do it now because it's already up. You won't get a lift because it's already up. So you wait till it goes down and I'll show you, okay? So before you put the saddle on, you want to lift that back. Then you also
Should I be on your side?
No, you stay there a second.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
You also, let's dance here. All right, I just don't want him to nip you. You're gonna run your hands up the side of his leg
Okay.
and just do a little lift in these muscles right here. Okay, these are pectoral muscles. Don't worry about what they're called. But these muscles and these muscles inside the rib cage have to be able to move like this. And they have to be able to contract and relax correctly. Does that make sense? Just keeping it simple. And when a horse is tight up here and they have girthing issues because of ill-fitting saddles or postural issues, those muscles start to change. And instead of contracting, they relax. And those that relax contract. So they do the opposite thing. And so then the horses get really tight in this whole entire area. And so that's what we call girthy. Like, oh, he's girthy, he doesn't like the girth on. Well, no, he doesn't, but the reason for that is because his muscles are tight. He's got restriction somewhere in this thoracic chest cavity where it's actually where you're doing up the girth right here. And that's his lungs too. So if the saddle's not fitting and there's tension here, you get this pattern that just continues and continues. Okay, so your key is going to be, but not long term, you have to widen this.
Yeah, I do have another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if you know. You know, they come in different sizes.
Yeah.
So skip another size and go to the next. And you just experiment.
It's hard to say. I mean, you should probably, one of the things that you need to know is their spine. We look at it and we think that's the spine right there, right? Actually, keep him still, because I don't want him to be upset with this. Actually, that is just the top of the spinous process. That's the bumpy bits in your back, okay? And so what you see here is just the top of, you know how a spine looks like that and it's got the pieces coming out either side? So these are the very tippy tops of the spine. The pieces that come out of the side, called your transverse process, they are this long. Okay, and they're very long up front, and they get a little narrower, and then they get long again towards the back. So they're wide. So your gullet, which is this piece here, right, and all the way through, the hole that runs all the way through the saddle, that should be at least this wide.
Okay.
On
So
any saddle.
That's about 2 inches.
Yeah, on either side. And the problem is, you go and buy a saddle, at least if you buy what I call a cookie cutter one, that, you know, they have the Crosbys or the named ones that they just manufacture because show jumpers have ridden in them and they're famous. And well, most of them have really narrow gullets. And they're not mechanically correct for the horse's movement when the horse moves, because this whole system has to move like this. Does that make sense?
I'm trying.
Yeah, don't worry about getting it all.
Okay.
Just get the pieces that you hear. The rest will go in and sit somewhere, but don't worry about getting every piece of information. But the bottom line you have to go home with, that is important for your horse, is see how he's well, you already know that he's got atrophy here. He's got something going on right here. See these little bumps?
Can I feel?
That's a pressure point.
You don't like that?
Right, that's where the saddle is putting pressure on him and it shouldn't be. When you had it in the position that you had it in. Okay, so right there, and you can see that little divot. See that?
I see that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so that's a pressure point. It's like you having, a crude example would be you having a blister, or not even a blister, just a sore or a rub or a tender spot on your heel, and putting those same shoes on day after day after day. It's like, oh God, it's rubbing. It's rubbing. That's rubbing. I mean, that's a crude example, but better example, maybe you having a backpack on for 5 days and it's going to rub you right here.
Yes,
Yeah?
yes, okay.
Because he's not going to blister, but he's going to be sore. What do you do when you're sore? You move away from it, right?
So then he kind of hollows his back.
Right.
So he doesn't use his hind end.
Right. And even if he did want to use his hind end, if there's pressure here, he's going to want to move away from the discomfort here because it's sore.
And that's why mounting him also becomes a
Yes,
problem.
because that's where your stirrup bar sits, right at this point where you had that saddle. Even if we move it forward a bit, your stirrup bar pressure is still here. So you put your weight in here, and it pulls on that place that's already sore. See, I just put my finger in here, and he goes, ouch, ouch, his ears go back. So, so you got a bit of a saddling issue. It's not a broken horse as much as a saddling problem, but it does need to be addressed because it won't get any better.
Okay, once I change the, whatever you call that piece, will he, and he's comfortable, will he show it immediately, or does this have to get better?
This is going to have to get better.
Okay, and
So you won't, because he's got a bit of a habit in him that as soon as you put that saddle on, it's going to be a little uncomfortable until he braces and finds his position, and then he's like, okay, now I can handle it, I'm ready, you know? So what has to happen is a little bit of a re-teaching process for you and him that, okay, this, you can go here, and I'll show you some massages and stuff you can do to start to soften this tissue. And then, see right there, he said, oh, okay. So, is there ever a time that you don't ride? I mean, what's your riding pattern generally during the week?
I don't ride on the weekend most of the time.
Okay.
Just the weekdays.
Okay, okay. So what you might, what we might try and do is once you change this, and I don't know whether that's going to be enough. I can't tell you because I can't see it.
Okay. What has to happen? Okay, you said there should be a 2 inches. Like if I look through the saddle, it should have a kind of a shape like that, and sitting to.
Okay, let's just do this real fast. I mean, I'll make this part of your lesson because this is an important piece for you. Somebody take that first? Okay, I'm going to saddle him without this pad so you can really see.
Are you coming back? Let's get to
5
the
minutes into it, she wants to back.
Can we move with you?
Well, my winter's aren't as bad as yours, that's for sure. Okay. So when we look at this without the pad,
Okay.
this piece here, right,
Okay.
is fine. That has a decent clearing
Okay.
up here. It's this here,
That one.
these tops of these panels that are pinching on him because of your gullets being a little narrow. Okay?
Okay.
And this is your gullet right here. Okay?
Oh,
that is
so
the gullet.
that's
all
the
this is
gullet. So he seems to need a wider one.
he needs to be open in this panel area. This part has to open.
Okay.
You can, this is better than some, so I'm not suggesting you have to go buy a completely new saddle, because this at least is wider than many, which are like this.
Okay.
So he can live with that, okay?
Okay.
I'm not asking you to go spend,
Just change this gullet.
but this piece right here, this piece has to open.
Okay.
This whole area has to open here. And if you can move these pads open a little bit and shift them, so even if they're an inch or two wider on both sides,
Okay.
then you can have room to pad him a little differently. I'm not convinced that that padding system is working for you either, because that's actually putting a little bit more pressure on him. See how these vertebrae are all bumpy up top?
Yeah.
Okay, they shouldn't be like that. So what that says is they're kind of stuck up, and they're stuck in a flexion. They're higher than they should be, okay? Just because he's been trying to compensate, and he's been hollowing out here, and stretching here and just trying to find a comfortable place. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, don't worry about this as much because we can work on this. But your bottom line is we have to widen these gullets. You have to fit the saddle, not here. That's where you had it.
Okay.
It can't be here because that digs into him. You're gonna have to bring it up a little more, a little higher than I would perhaps want it, because you don't want to dig into his shoulders either. See, he's pretty tender in this whole entire thoracic area.
But that's the way the gullet size is now. If I get a wider gullet, then
But still don't stick it here, because even with a
so
wider
still
gullet,
stick it there. Okay.
on this horse, look, we saw what happens. Remember when I stick my expensive piece of equipment on him? And this is where you had your saddle
So you
before.
push it.
It's
Okay.
pushing down
Okay.
on him, and all of the weight is going into that area that's sore because it's downhill. All of your weight goes into that area. It's all going this way, okay? This should be in the middle, the deepest part of the saddle. So if I move this forward a little bit, let it just roll and find its place. See how that is more even? There's your deepest part of the saddle. So then your seat bones go straight down and are absorbed by his muscles. They don't push forward into all of those bones. And you'll find a better place to sit, okay? So what we need to do to make this fit now,
Yeah, but excuse me, if you widen this part,
Yeah.
then you worry about this sitting too low.
you have to, then you've had it.
You can't.
Until the horse can come up.
Right,
Because what we want is him to come up into this saddle,
right.
right? So I have my saddle is this wide. And when I start my horses, or before they get developed, I have a whole padding system
Okay.
that you add the pads so it allows the horse to actually lift his back as you're working him. And that's what you want to see. When you get off your horse, is his back higher or lower? And it should be higher. But many saddles and pads don't allow that because they compress, and we really get into buying, we got these gel pads, and the industry doesn't do us favors because they're like, well, here's a